One of our favorites back here on the program whenever I'm scratching my head over negotiations and markets and roster decisions. I'm like, get me Joe Banner on the phone, and a longtime executive in the National Football League is back here on our show. How are you, Joe Banner?
I'm doing great. I can give him some names of some NFL coaches that will pay the media to only ask three questions.
Right. Oh, who came up? Was it always Andy Reid's idea to say the time's yours? Where did you come up with that? He would always say that, right?
Yeah, definitely, he came up with that.
Time's yours. I mean, he's one of the only few guys. He just comes out. I'll say a couple of things. Time's yours. All right, let's just jump into this here, Joe. Why is the running back market the way it is from your perspective?
So I actually think the answer is fairly simple, even though I'm making it really complicated.
Okay.
I mean, the positions correlate to how the league views the importance and the contribution to winning and the supply and demand ratios of the position. So quarterbacks make a ton of money because they have a huge impact on who wins, and there's a shortage of really good ones. Running backs have a more modest, still important role in who wins, and there's actually an abundance. You know, we all took Economics 101, and they told us about supply and demand. So if you can do what the Eagles and the Chiefs are doing, and many other teams, and they've won 3 of the last 5 Super Bowls, and you're winning Super Bowls with running backs that are late-round picks or mid-round picks or making a modest amount of money, and you're trying to be smart about building your team and making sure the positions that actually decide the games have the best players, then we have what's happened in running backs. Now, what's happened to the guys this year, to me, takes that, I think, reasonably sound logic too far.
Okay.
Like if, you know, good running backs, very good running backs, top running backs in the league 3 years ago making $12 million and the cap goes up $20 million a year. 3 years later, offering them $12 million, which the Giants did, is not even close to fair. Even if we accept the premise of supply and demand is out of whack, you don't have to have a superstar running back to win. Even if you say all that, I mean, we're really at the point where Barkley isn't worth what a top tight end is worth, a top safety, a top guard. So I'm actually really sympathetic to Barkley, and the market should be in that, 15-ish, 16, 14, you can pick the number. Shouldn't be at 11. But the reason that the group as a whole, they're out of whack on supply and demand, and they matter. They matter a lot. We won in Philadelphia. We always had good running backs. We always had running backs also that were really crucial to the pass game. They weren't just good runners like
right.
Westbrook, McCoy, those guys. So there's the illusion that teams don't think running backs matter. At least all the teams I know of and everything we practiced and the teams that are currently winning Super Bowls all know running backs are very important. But they also know because there's an abundance of talent, you're better off putting a little extra into some defensive tackle or corner or, the other positions that are crucial to the wins.
Because it strikes me, again, Joe, because I'm not in the negotiations, obviously, privy to what's being said between Barkley and the Giants, and that Joe Shane seems to, like, what's another $1.5 million, $2 million, right? Like, what even if it's over 3 years, just so you can send your crucial player back into the locker room feeling in a way that he's fine talking to the media, which he did not do today, right? So it just seems like, and again, I know when toe meets ball, this might be old news, unless it isn't. I don't know. You're the guy who's maybe had experience with this. Why hold the line like that? I don't kind of get that. I figured I'll ask you.
Yeah, listen, I'll be very candid. I made this mistake very early in my career. I got perceived as being even tougher than I am, and I'm willing to be tough in a negotiation. And it's not constructive. I learned the lesson the hard way fairly quickly that there is real value for what turns out to be relatively small amounts of money to keep your locker room feeling really good and pick some spots where maybe you do pay a little bit more than you thought it was worth because, you want it to be that way. Listen, here's the reality. They're going to tag him again for sure now that he appeared so easily and so quickly. And, for better or worse, on one hand, I admire that he wants to play so badly and win so badly. On the other hand, you should fight for kind of what you deserve. But the fact of the matter is, because he went in so easily, he's definitely getting tagged again. He was probably getting tagged anyway, but now he's definitely getting tagged. So he's going to make about $23 million over 2 years. The fact of the matter is, it sounded like for 23, 24, he would have taken a long-term deal. now the Giants lose him after 2 years for sure. So I actually think there's both a monetary reason and a team cohesiveness, team leader argument for what was a very small amount of money to probably get a 4 or 5 year contract. And if you don't want him after 2 years, you probably don't have any charge left. Just move on. But they gave up the right to control his rights for 4 to 5 years over probably about $1 million over 2 years. I don't think that makes any sense, and I don't think him asking for, let's say, if it was 14, was at all unreasonable. He's really just taking what half a dozen guys, not like one deal, and he's not stuck on McCaffrey. He took like about half a dozen deals that were done 2 and 3 years ago that were all around 12, 5. Kamara's looks like 15 on paper, but it's really also really like 12, 5. Now the cap's gone up since then. So even if you just adjusted for the increase in the cap, he's $13.5 to $15 million guy. I don't see why they got stuck. And I do understand why he said no, but then he kind of lost the benefit of that. Even if he wanted to listen, if I was his agent, I would have said, come in the Tuesday before the first game. You eliminate the risk of getting hurt in all of training camp. Mm-hmm. You at least worry them and create some cost for tagging you instead of getting a deal done. You come on in that Tuesday, you probably won't play the first week, so we've really reduced the risk of injury. You still get to play all season. You're there for teammates. And if the Giants were meant to have a good season, they'll still have it. And in the meantime, you've at least worried them that in the future they need to treat you right or there will be a cost. But by what he did, he made it very easy for them to just tag him next year. And frankly, he sent the message to the league that you can hold out, play hardball with these running backs, and even a deal as bad as $11 million. I mean, there are slot receivers getting $11 million. There are nickel corners. There are centers making way over $11 million. And that's where he's stuck now.
So before we move on to the quarterbacks, Joe Banner, what was that part in the beginning of your career where you said you learned the hard way that the few, couple $1 million is worth giving it to keep the peace? What was that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the names don't come to mind easily since they're almost 30 years ago now.
Right.
But we had some tough negotiations with some players early over a pretty small amount of money.
Right.
We lost Trotter. We were very far apart on that deal. Mm-hmm. He ended up coming back to us after not being happy there for a year. In the end, we lost Dawkins, which I think everybody involved in still feels, bad about. That was a little deeper, into my time.
Yes.
Running back, rookie deals weren't quite as slotted as they were. You could get into a fight about some of the language and offsets and stuff like that.
Right.
Some of which I did. And, in hindsight was, fighting for something that probably didn't matter. And even if it ended up mattering with a small enough number of dollars, it wasn't worth the fight.
Well, in terms of slotting, Joe Banner, Joe Banner here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's turn to quarterbacks because now, again, Justin Herbert is an incredibly talented guy. There's no doubt in my mind he is one of those unicorns that you hope to get and land in the draft. Back in the day, prior to the collective bargaining agreement of 2011, the Chargers would have had to have paid Herbert whatever the market bore for the quarterback at the time coming out of the draft, which is probably the highest paid player in the history of the Chargers franchise, sight unseen, not a single snap being done. They changed the system. Now they see at least 3 years from him, so they kind of know he's the guy, but he hasn't won a playoff game, and he's making the most money in the history of the National Football League. Are the owners cool with that now? Is this better than the previous system, do you think?
Well, I think it's better, at least in the sense that, it sounds like a cold term, but we're kind of flushing a lot of money down the table that could go to, you figure out who, should go to players, but mm-hmm. players, owners, whatever, on players that really weren't advancing the league, weren't really helping their teams, so they were just mistaken draft picks. I mean, the intent of the system changed, and I was actually a part of the team that negotiated the deal, mm-hmm. which both sides seemed to be in favor of. The league certainly more than the union, but they were both okay with it, was by taking less of the money and putting it into a pool that ends up getting, paid to players that really never achieve anything in the league. This money is still going to be in the cap, so it should go to veterans instead of, rookies. So, yes, everybody gets paid fairly or even too low, depending on how good they are, the first 3 or 4 years. But then there's even a bigger pot of money after that to pay, for example, the Herberts of the league. I actually think that there's probably ideas in between those two extremes, but I do think this is better than all that money that was going into miscellaneous charges and devaluing the top picks and making it harder for the teams who are picking high to get better, which is the intent of the upside-down draft. So I do think it was a step in the right direction. It makes more sense for the Herberts of the world, who at least are really good players, versus some of the players that were picked in the top 10 that really ended up just taking a lot of money out of the league and away from other players without ever contributing anything to the league.
So where are we headed with quarterbacks? 60 million, 70 million a year? That's coming, right?
We are.
Right? Yeah.
That's what I say that these guys got a ton of money. It's ridiculous what I'm about to say, but they all did deals that were too long. I mean, Herbert is under contract for 2 more years, plus he signed a 5-year extension. They control his rights for 7 years plus tags.
Mm-hmm.
He may never get another contract. And 4 years from now, the cap is going to be probably 40% higher than it is right now when we're paying quarterbacks $52 million a year. So even the one extra year, even though it's way down the road from now, probably hard to worry about when you're looking at that kind of money.
Right.
There probably are costing themselves a year that they're probably going to get paid the equivalent of $45 million versus $70 to $80 million. Now, I'm talking 6 years from now with where the quarterback market is going to go, if it even maintains close to the percentage of the cap that it's taking up these days. And it will, because they have more leverage than everybody.
So how do you think Mahomes is feeling today, Joe?
He seems shockingly relaxed, doesn't he?
Well, I mean, he's got trophies in the case. Everybody's seeing how he ticks through his documentary. Life is great for him. I understand that. But do you think he sits there at any point in time and he's just like, okay, just at some point they got to revisit this thing? Because he's currently, after Burrow, he's almost out of the top 10 of highest paid per annual rate. What do you think?
Yeah, well, listen, I think at some point, even if he's not making an issue of it, going back to the conversation we said about the value of just kind of doing the right thing,
yes,
that they need to approach him and at least make adjustments, even if they don't take him all the way to where he, would be if you started from scratch, for example. But, it's what I said about Barkley. There's a part of me, I worked in management that, really admires and appreciates players that are really focused on the game and the winning and all that kind of stuff. At the same time, there's no reason you shouldn't fight for what you deserve and what's fair. And clearly at this point, I mean, his deal really averaged, even if he earns all the incentives, it averages $50 million per year.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got a long way to go, and we're already at 52.5, and when Burrow signs, we'll probably be at 53.5 or something like that. So I don't think they have hit that point yet, but they're not far from the point where it actually just becomes the wrong thing to do to not make some adjustments.
Again, he's on your family tree, if you will, and Brett Veach, does he reach out, or they just like pass each other in the hallway and just give the head nod and just figure, let's just go win football games, or what?
They're still high-fiving after the game. They're still, hugging each other in the hallways.
Right. I'm just wondering, do you reach out to him first, or you just got 9 years left on it, so just keep playing?
If I'm reaching out, it's not for another year or two, but yes,
okay.
I think at that point, assuming he's playing as he is, there's no reason to think he won't be. I do. I actually reach out, and hopefully his mindset is, if my deal remaining average is 45, and the new deals were 55. Okay, get me to 52. I mean, just get me someplace, where I can feel like I'm being respected. You don't have to pretend that we never did the deal. I understood the advantage of taking a long-term deal early. I got those benefits. I'm not asking you to pretend that didn't happen, but at least get me into the ballpark of where I should be based on who I am now.
Okay, and a couple more for you, Joe Banner, before I send you off onto your Wednesday. The concept of franchise tags has been brought up more than ever before because of what happened with Barkley and Josh Jacobs, and saying how players should push to get rid of the franchise tag. Will that ever be removed from a collective bargaining agreement between both sides? What do you think?
I don't think so, but I'm really not sure it's the right issue. I've actually had this debate with some of the people that have been involved from the players' side and some of the agents, and just kind of talking out loud about it. I mean, I think what the union should do is just fight for everything it can to get the cap as high as possible and the percentage of revenues as high as possible. I think they have to be aware of trying to do the best thing for everybody. And I just think that the competitive nature of most of the teams in the league, a larger cap will get spent, and all of the players will benefit from that. There is some benefit to getting rid of the tag. There's no doubt about that. I'm not pretending there isn't. And it isn't a crazy strategy. But to me, if they just put all of their energy, into, a couple of things they really cared about, maybe some of those are for alumni and, other kinds of things like that, longer-term health coverage, and then just focused everything they had on just moving the cap up as high as they can, I think it takes care of kind of a whole list of problems. Again, you can make the argument either way. It's not a silly discussion. But, my own opinion is that they should put all their efforts into getting as large a piece of the pie as they can and realizing, when you talk about 1,500, 1,800 players on active rosters, they're going to benefit the most from that.
Last one for you, Joe. The best roster in the National Football League, in your estimation, going into the 2023 playing season, barring injury, is which?
So I'm really boring. I'm saying the Chiefs. But I also want to say I am not in the school of people that are down on the Bills and worrying about Sean McDermott, who I worked with for about a dozen years. The Bills are still an exceptional team. I hear all this negative conversation about them. I'm just not there. But I'm, in a very boring way, sticking with the Kansas City Chiefs as the best roster.
What concerns you about the Jets? What concerns you?
Biggest is the offensive line.
Okay.
And then, I just think anytime you're dealing with somebody 38, 39 years old, obviously talking about Rodgers, that you got to be scared to death about staying healthy for, 21-odd games, not 17, and assuming he doesn't even play in the preseason to get to the Super Bowl, it's still 21 games. So those are my primary worries.
Okay. And I saw something that the Jets redid a contract that it's a $1.5 million salary this year and $107 next. Did you see that, Joe? Did you see that?
Yes, I did.
How does that work? How does it even work?
It seems like they should have taken care of that before they finalized the deal. Then, I did. That structure in Green Bay was very strange, but I read it a long time ago. I didn't see that it had escalated like that and become so lopsided. But, there was talk at the time that maybe he'd take a pay cut, try to help the team, maybe win a championship. He didn't do any of that. He restructured versus renegotiated. That's a big difference.
Well, I mean, he's not gonna get paid. I mean, obviously, they're already talking about him playing multiple years there. He said something about it. Saleh said they expect it, or and $107 million, that doesn't compute. I don't get it.
So if he gets one this year and 107, even if they even it off, so he's going to make $53 million a year, 53.5 over the next 2 years. So he's right with the top paid guy if we just assume they somehow paid him the same amount but over 2 years. But I listen, the talk, the rumor at the time that they did the deal was that he had, he said, listen, I'm not going to guarantee it, I'm not going to promise, but I intend to play more than 1 year, and 2 or 3 is totally realistic. So they went into that deal expecting that it was very, very likely they had him for more than 1 year.
Okay.
And when he leaves, they're going to have, a lot to clean up. So.
Well, they put a lot of credit. They put a lot on the credit card the last time they almost made the Super Bowl, and got 2 years of a run out of it. Maybe they do that here. I don't know. At some point, all these young kids who are so terrifically talented are all going to have to get paid. So I guess that's down the road. Let's just try and win it this year, as long as you can protect them, is what you're saying. That's about it.
As a Jets fan, will you be happy with that?
Which is what?
You get 2 really good years. I don't think a Super Bowl, and then you're kind of back to where you were.
Joe, let me just explain something to you. I'm a 54-year-old man, and I'm waiting. I'm waiting. And so yes, it would make me very happy. Do it. Let's go. Like, this is it. I can't. It doesn't. Rodgers said that it's all about how the Jets are going to handle success, and I told him, "Floor's yours on that, bud. I'll take your cue because I don't know how to do it. I don't know. I don't know what that feels like." Honestly,
it's a good problem, right?
Yeah, exactly. A child that was born when they last made an AFC Championship game is getting bar or bat mitzvah this summer. Let's go. You know what I'm saying?
I get it.
Thanks, Joe, for the time. Greatly appreciate it. You be well.
Mine too. You too. Take it easy.
You got it. The great Joe Banner back here on The Rich Eisen Show. Catch The Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.